Hello and welcome to the Newsx Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, with the budget around the corner, I think the focus really should be on the economy. And when we talk about the economy, I think we'll have to take into account the large number of imports from China. In fact, these have gone from what is called a manageable level to a totally dangerous level, a level that is harming our own economy. What is the impact of that and what can we do to fix it? Because a lot of it is to do with China's aggressive posturing and of course India's stand, our own weak laws, our weak anti-dumping laws, our FTAs, our GST laws, the loopholes in those. How can we fix these things? Because this is affecting all the sectors from petrochemicals to our cars to our consumer goods to everything is being affected by the Chinese goods which are literally being dumped onto our country. Joining me on the show today is, I have with me Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya. He is the president of the Center of Digital Economy Policy Research. Ashwani Mahajanji, he is the national convener for Swadeshi Jagran Manch. And Professor Rajiv Arora, he is a former additional secretary of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry and an international trade and policy expert. Jayajit, if I can just ask you to help us, tell us in a few words, the nature of the problem, the dangerous levels that the Chinese imports are reaching into our country.
You know, as of now, the trade deficit between India and China has crossed $100 billion. Now, that just looks like a number, but $100 billion is almost half the size of the Pakistani economy. That is the trade deficit between India and China. What that essentially means is that there is tons of money actually moving from India into China because we are importing these products. So at an economic level, it's extremely dangerous. Second is, as we have seen during COVID, whenever China wants, they can switch off these products from being given from China to India. So they can switch off medicines, they can switch off things like PVC, which drives 29% of the economy in this country, and so on and so forth. Even recently, we have seen that they have decided to switch off rare earths from being sent, which means that our entire automobile industry comes to its knees because they cannot get the rare earth, which is extremely critical for automobiles and multiple other sectors, including our BrahMos missiles, including the Akash-3. All of them use rare earth metals. In addition, we have become the second largest mobile phone manufacturer that also needs critical minerals and rare earth. So just switching off something from China leaves us very, very vulnerable. Now, we all know that India and China does not really have the best of relationships. Even with countries where they have good relationships and where they had set up their factories inside China. Let's say Germany had set up one factory in China. During COVID, when they needed to take the output of that factory to Germany, China did not allow that, even from a German factory. So we are exposing ourselves to supply chain resilience issue where instead of firing anything from China, they will simply switch off the supply chain and the entire country will be down on its knees. So that's a level of danger that we have got ourselves into.
And just before I go to the others, I think, there are, when I was having a conversation with you, there are 3 points where you can actually mark at the time when these imports from China rose.
Yes, in fact, 2017 was once when the imports from China shot up by about 25% in that year. Then again, that happened post-COVID, around 2020-21 onwards, again, another 25% jump. We are again seeing that jump happening now as we speak. There is a significant spike of imports happening from China. When we link back to what's happening to China in those 3 times, what was so different is that in 2017, Trump's first administration came into US and they immediately put tariffs against China. China was desperately looking for export markets and India seemed to open up its markets for China. Same happened after COVID. In 2020, China was hit by COVID and they needed export markets. The rest of the world was shutting down China and the exports of China into India kind of galloped. From August 2020 till April 2022, 61% of the DGTR recommendations on anti-dumping duty on Chinese products were rejected as part of the government process. What anti-dumping duty essentially means is that if somebody is selling goods at prices which are unfair and too low, then the government steps in to safeguard the Indian industry. The same is happening now. 85% of the anti-dumping duty is recommended by DGTR. DGTR is the agency in the government which does the investigation to see if there's dumping happening. they have been rejected as of now. So therefore, there is a spike that we see in the imports from China, and this is impacting the capacities within the country. So in the olden days, what you would see is that, let's say there's Russia-Ukraine war that's going on. Russia is bombing the Ukrainian factories. Ukraine is trying to bomb the Russian factories. That was a war of the past. Now what's happening is that you simply reduce the price so that the factories in this country becomes uncompetitive, and you don't need to put a bomb. The factories close down without putting a bomb. So that's bombing of the factories using pricing as a weapon. And that's where things like anti-dumping duty, the union budget that's coming in, where it'll declare basic custom duties, which the Americans call as tariff. Those are safeguards and measures that ensure that there's a level playing field between Indian manufacturers and that our capacities are safeguarded.
Very well explained. Ashwini ji, so it's really an economic war that is going on between India and China. And this at a time, when we are talking about Atmanirbharta, Swadeshi. So this, how does India protect itself? क्या कर सकते हैं?
You see, all these years, the government has been making efforts. First, Prime Minister Modi talked about Make in India. Then in 2020, during COVID, we called for Atmanirbhar Bharat. And now from the Red Fort itself, Prime Minister Modi is calling for Swadeshi. I think the intent is correct, but the problem lies in the details and in terms of the policies. We at Swadeshi Jagar Manch conducted a research about how to stop Chinese imports, and we in fact chose certain variables like anti-dumping duties, and we found out that anti-dumping duties are not at all effective. 40% of the anti-dumping duties are not effective even during the period in which it is imposed, and later on, after a year or so, after a gap, they adjust themselves. Like if you put anti-dumping duty on an product and nth product, so they will bring it in n-1 product. So
they will reduce that cost or add.
No, not that. They will send you the product which is not nth one, the n-1, like the earlier process, and they send it to you. It will not catch the anti-dumping duty. So our conclusion is that the only way we can do it is by imposing tariffs. And we have seen in 2017-18, Swadeshi Jagar Manch organized a big movement against Chinese, and in 2017 September we organized a big rally. That was the first time, and I think the only time, a rally is organized in Ramlila Maidan in Delhi, lakhs of people coming in. And then in 2018 budget, in February, then Finance Minister Arun Jaitley imposed tariffs on a few products. He raised tariffs from 10% to 20% for electronics and telecom. Jajit would remember. And then later on in July and August and then September, again the tariffs were imposed on different other products. So in just 1 year, we found that the electronic imports declined from $28 billion to $18 billion, and the deficit which we are talking about declined from $63 billion to $53 billion. So in just 1 year, this could happen. So the government could have taken clue from there that yes, raising of tariffs is the solution, and many of the Chinese factories, they started coming into India and started making mobile phones, and we know the famous case of India being the net importer of smartphones, becoming a net exporter of smartphones. But I think we have not taken due lessons from what we could achieve during that period. And now what I feel is that there is a disconnect between departments in the government. One department is suggesting because the anti-dumping duties are suggested by the Commerce Ministry, and DGTR coming under the Commerce Ministry, and the Finance Ministry is to implement it. So they feel, we are the government and we have to put a face before the world, we are imposing too many anti-dumping duties. But we must understand that the whole world is doing that, and anti-dumping duties, though they are not very successful, but still
it sends a message.
It sends a message, and whole world is adopting those measures. And I must tell you that anti-dumping duty is not the only measure. Tariffs, as I've just suggested, but there are many non-tariff barriers which are WTO compliant, and anti-dumping duties are also WTO compliant, and there are many measures which are WTO compliant, and even raising of tariffs is also WTO compliant, because we can impose up to 50.4% average weighted tariff, whereas we are imposing hardly 6%. So we can raise our tariffs by 8 times. So nobody can stop us, because it is all WTO compliant. Because but we can impose various other measures also. Like US has been imposing 6,500, more than that, non-tariff barriers. They are different kinds of measures.
I'll bring in Professor Arora also quickly, and then we'll go into, I wanted to come to what US and EU are doing, but let me just first get him on to the issues that have been raised by the other panelists. Is anti-dumping duties are not good enough? Should we raise tariffs? What is your take?
Well, I just agree with both the panelists about the concerns and the challenges we have on this, the imports rising from China and our inability to curb it the way we are looking forward to. In fact, I would like to recall a meeting we had in 2019. That was a stakeholder consultation done by the Ministry of Commerce. The Commerce Minister did that. And the agenda at that point of time was that we should have a unified approach to curb these kind of practices. That unified approach was that it should be a kind of an optimum mix of both tariff and non-tariff measures which can actually curb the imports. In fact, anti-dumping, countervailing duty and safeguards, these are supposed to be the trade remedies we agreed for all this in WTO. In fact, most of the developing countries, including India, as a proponent, we said that we need all this because unfair trade is something which will not go along with the process of deep globalization. So we must have these kind of safety nets for developing countries, and we have been using it. There have been challenges that we have abused at many times. We have been a significant user of these instruments, but that has just been an use, not an abuse, because of a wide market. The diversified market full of MSMEs and various diversified industries, products, geographical regions. So we have been rightly using it. But the challenges have been coming in terms of its efficacy. Like from China, suppose we impose something and suddenly we find after 1 year there has been a dilution of the whole protectionist regime because of the processes of circumvention or absorption of the duty. And for that, again, we have laws which we have gotten into our anti-dumping rules. 2012, we got the anti-circumvention rules, and then later on in 2019 and 20 we got the anti-absorption rules also in our act, in our customs tariff act, and also under the anti-dumping rules. So they have been working well, I would say, but the exporters are more smarter, I would say, than the policy makers, because we find one way to plug it and they find another way to circumvent the whole duty.
Okay.
So these are some of the challenges, but yes, a unified approach of a right mix will be a right kind of a strategy to actually address this kind of unfair trade.
I'm going to take a break and come back and delve a little deeper into this problem as to what else can we do about it and how serious is the problem. So stay with us. Hello and welcome back to the Newsx Sunday Guardian Roundtable. As the budget approaches, we are taking a look at the danger the economy is facing from the rising imports from China. And in fact, Dr. Bhattacharya, we spoke a bit about what the rules are in place and how if they're not really doing the job. But there's also something called quality control orders that were introduced, I think, to prevent substandard goods from coming in. And these have been revoked. So what, can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. What quality control order does is basically it ensures that there's good quality products coming into India. As simple as a pressure cooker. Do we want imported pressure cooker to come in without mandatory quality control? Well, no. It can burst on our face. And so similarly, there are many other things which are important. For example, if you don't have the right kind of PVC, then there will be carcinogenic material going through the PVC, and PVC is all over the place. Your drinking water flows through PVC, agricultural pipes, the water goes through PVC, and when these carcinogens go through it, it accumulates in the vegetables. We eat the vegetables, it accumulates into us, and it leads to the very unfortunate outcomes. And therefore, quality control is important. Also, it is important because it provides a level playing field. What happens is that poor quality material is pushed into the Indian economy. Our existing capacities cannot compete because they're producing better quality, so the cost is higher. By the time people react to that situation, these companies would have shut down because the poorer quality, cheaper product would have come and finished them off. Now, are we saying that therefore we should have quality control because we are protectionist? Protectionist is a much abused word. We are trying to safeguard our industries. If you provide a level playing field to Indian companies, the rest of the world will be scared of Indian companies' competitiveness. Indian companies have been extremely competitive to the extent that you see European Union was not allowing Indian imports to happen, which is why we need to have a trade deal with EU to bring down the tariffs. If you look at China, Indian products are just not allowed into China. They have put huge amount of trade barriers to Indian products getting into China, which is why it's just a one-way flow. It's like a valve. You can get from China into India, but not the other way around. And therefore, QCOs were put in to address this issue that poorer quality stuff, or as we call it, the Chinese quality stuff should not come into India. We are a better economy. They've been synonymous
with poor quality.
But what happened thereafter is that data was given to a high-level committee, which showed that post-introduction of QCO, the prices of things like inputs to the textile industry has gone up by 20 to 30%. Those were the inputs given in that report, and it's published. However, if we compare the data from the Ministry of Commerce site called the TradeStat data with what has been stated in that report, they don't match. The prices did not go up. In fact, in most goods, the price actually came down because the global prices came down. And wherever the Indian prices went up in a few of the products, they were still lower than the global prices. So the basis of removing the QCO was little controversial in that sense. We do need to have quality control in place. In some cases, the QCOs were put in a manner which was a bit high-handed, and so those had to be fine-tuned. But it's a typical case of throwing the baby with the bathwater. What you need to fix, instead of fixing that, we threw away the whole thing, which has now again exposed the Indian manufacturers to poor quality imports coming in, and it seeps through. You bring in the poor quality raw material. The MSMEs do not have the ability to test whether that raw material is good or bad because testing equipments are expensive. They will put it into their end products, And it is not like Western economies where they put in the check only on the end products. You can't do that in India because you don't have the MSMEs do not have the ability to test. Also, the Western countries have environmental laws. For example, Europe has got REACH as an environmental law, under which they do not allow raw materials which do not follow these standards to come in. Right, so it's not under the industrial laws, but it's under the environment laws. And we seem to be looking at only the industrial laws and not the environmental laws, and therefore we have kind of blocked QCOs, which is the quality control orders, which is mandatory quality being put into the imports at abeyance. That seems to be harming the industry, and therefore we also see a spike in imports from China again, because they're the masters of poorer quality, although their quality is improving now. But the spearhead is, tell me a price and I'll send the material to you, because I will then reduce the quality.
Correct. Fair enough. But what are the sectors that you are worried about? Whether it's the petrochemical sector, the textile sector. Now, are we India is becoming the tailor shop of the world?
Before I answer your question, I would add to what Jajitji was talking about. In fact, I will give you an example of a particular product on which the QCO has been imposed, and the increase in the price what will happen. See, earlier to QCO, there was a 5% anti-dumping duty on viscose staple fiber. This is a raw material for textile industry. And we found out that in a garment of equivalent to value of 1,000 rupees, the total cost of textile is around 100 rupees. Rest is, other costs. That 100 rupees, if you impose 5% anti-dumping duty, or whether the QCO has been imposed and the increase in price is around 5%. So it would be hardly, we found out that the increase in the price would be hardly 2 rupees 60 paisa, something like that, because of that material. So and in a price of 1,000 rupees, if 2 rupees 60 paisa is added, and with that you become Atmanirbhar, self-reliant in that particular product, that itself speaks tons about the legitimacy of the QCO or the legitimacy of the anti-dumping duty, because it is going to give you the self-reliance. Similarly, I give you an example in APIs. Chinese deliberately killed our API industry by sending their APIs at a ridiculously low prices. And what happened, Jajiji may be diplomatic in saying that, whether it is good or bad, but or this is a WTO compliant, and it's fine. What I'm saying is I accept it, and that the QCOs should also be used as measures to control imports. It's not just about the quality, it is also to reduce our dependence on Chinese. You see what happened, because of the dumping by China, in the earlier days, we used to produce 90% of the APIs, the raw material for our pharmaceutical industry ourselves, because of the dumping by China, and ultimately our industry was killed, and we were reduced to 10%. We were producing hardly 10% of the APIs, and 90% we were dependent on China. In the beginning, also Jajiji was saying that if China so decides, they can stop our industry.
Yeah,
So this is a weaponization. So to come out of that, to save ourselves from other countries weaponizing the supply of raw materials or critical minerals or whatever, we have to be self-reliant, and हमें कुछ शर्माने की जरूरत नहीं है कि हम ये कर रहे हैं.
The politician on the panel, he's calling it as it is. Well done, well said. Yeah.
So हमें कुछ शर्माने की जरूरत नहीं है, हमें अपने देश को बचाना है, and therefore Therefore, imposing QCOs, you see, if we are imposing QCOs, we are stopping cheaper footwears coming from China to safeguard our footwear industry. We have to put QCOs on e-rickshaws to safeguard our e-rickshaw industry. We have to put QCOs on the chemicals to safeguard our chemical industry. So after all, the whole world is talking about becoming self-reliant, reducing dependence on others, coming out of the weaponization, stopping weaponization. So what is all this? So why we should be saints in our country?
To that, yeah.
So we have to. And now you were asking
Yeah,
about
we are out of time totally. So quickly, if you can give me one line with the sectors that you are worried about, then I'll get.
Yeah, I think the whole of the economy needs to be worried about, because you name the sector where we are not dependent on China. So we are getting dependent on China on chemicals, both organic, inorganic, electronics, telecoms, what not. So we have to adopt a all-encompassing approach, and to whatever, not only QCOs. We must go and study the measures being adopted by China, measures being adopted by US, measures being adopted by other countries, how they are trying to safeguard their industries, how they are imposing the non-tariff measures. So we should not be very shy of adopting these measures.
And safeguarding ourselves. So what else can we do?
Well, I think we, as very rightly Dr. Ashwini mentioned about, Dr. Mahajan mentioned about the kind of things we need to do. There are two things which come to my mind, and we should use them. They are fully WTO compatible. The first one is we have now an interministerial group set up for increasing imports from China. Now, this group monitors as to what's happening on a day-to-day basis, weekly basis about the imports from China. We have a provision of a suo motu investigation which can be done in anti-dumping. It can even be done in CVD cases, even for safeguards. So the moment we get that kind of an alert, without waiting for the applicant domestic industry to file a petition, let's go quickly and initiate an investigation. Later on, the merits have to be taken from the industry data, and then we proceed. It's fully WTO compliant. We have used this way back in 90s also, when things were bad with China, specifically with China, and it showed us the results. So we can actually use that. The other thing is that we were too much dependent on one type of tool, that is anti-dumping for the dumping countries. Whereas US has a number of cases done on anti-subsidy for China, and China, we know, gives a lot of subsidies. But we are doing less of subsidy cases because of the complexity of data and the cumbersome analysis we need to do. And the other strategic and the policy issue is that we have a rule which is a WTO plus rule of imposing a lesser of the required duty than the extent of dumping or subsidy. We try to find out what is the level of injury our industry is facing, and then we limit it. We limit it to the lower level because we believe that we should not create overheating in the economy. That's something which we have actually adopted for ourselves. WTO doesn't impose that on us. The EU, along with us, did the same thing at the time of joining WTO. But later on, looking at the non-market principles being adopted by China, they shifted over from the lesser duty rule with respect to the non-market economies, and we are still not done it. If we do it, we then have the option of greater use of anti-subsidy action along with anti-dumping action only in cases where it warrants, where there is a non-market economy principle coming in, that's majority for China. And then we can be more effective, we can prevent that kind of a thing. So these two things, if we do, fully WTO compliant, probably we can add something more to our efficacy of the anti-dumping system.
So some solutions here, but the problem is really grave, and it is, as Dr. Bacharya very rightly said, an act of war by itself, because you cripple the economy, you really bring the country down to its knees. So this is the time to live up to the slogan of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and I do hope that some of this cognizance will be taken in the budget this year. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.